Oh, the first error of the morning, the usual. So good morning, everyone, and really welcome to this first virtual Clinician Meets Engineers meeting. Although this is actually the third meeting of this nature that we've had. And we've been planning this for a very long time, right, H? Since pre-COVID.
Yes.
The only difference is normally we would have your coffee and your tea, even, I don't know, some champagne perhaps. But of course, in a virtual meeting, you might have to supply your own coffee and tea. But hopefully in the near future we can have another meet that we are able to physically meet and talk and eat and drink and laugh. But we've got a really power pack program today, actually. And without further delaying things, H, would you, my co-chair, partner in crime, do you want to perhaps make some introduction and then we can move to the icebreaker?
Absolutely. So actually, I'm going to do a little bit of housekeeping first. We are, this is a joint event across the Faculty of Medicine, and it was started across ECS with the Center for Healthcare Technologies. It's expanding greatly, so we have folks from across engineering and across both the hospital and medicine now. The point of today is less about, listening to lots of information, although you will have to listen to some information. It's more about making the connections, meeting new people, creating a larger networking, finding somebody, in the States we would say, meet somebody across the aisle, right? Across the political aisle. The goal for today is for the folks who live up in Highfield and would consider themselves technologists to find somebody who is in the hospital or the Faculty of Medicine who has a health-related problem that technology might be applicable to. Or for the people in the hospital and the clinicians to say, hey, I constantly beat my head against this problem. Is there a tech solution to this that we could have a joint endeavor on? So please remember, the goal today is to have the conversations and meet new people. I am, though, we are asking that we keep ourselves muted, especially during the big sessions. There's a lot of us. Raise your hand or type a question in the chat if you want to get going. If you've noticed, we've all started to try to change our backgrounds just to give a little hint about who we are and what we do, just to make it a little bit easier to remember people's names, since we don't have our little name badges. For today, we have a series of events. We're going to start with an icebreaker, which I will explain momentarily. We will then have a series of talks, very short talks, elevator briefs, basically, from across the tech and the clinical space, just so you get an idea of the words that we're using, some of the themes of problem areas. From that, we will be going into breakout rooms based along the technical spread. You can choose any breakout room you want. You can go to multiple breakout rooms. You can join any conversation. Again, it's to meet people, it's to understand what the words are that people are using to describe the space and to make these connections. And then we will all come back together, have an overview from an enterprise perspective of how do we take some of these ideas forward, and then say goodbye. That's the general agenda for today. Ying, before I introduce the icebreaker, do you have anything else that you'd like to add to this?
I only want to challenge everybody to find a date.
We're work networking.
So find a appropriate clinician or engineer date, right? And take the ideas forward, right? Be brave, right? Yes. Nothing's going to happen to you because you're at the end of the computer, so it's okay. And have fun, yeah. So in the rooms there will be people who are moderator associates who will be summarizing for us about the meetings, recording, and etc. So, you see that in their background. Yeah, just in case you're wondering, why they're there, who they are. That's all. Yeah, so I think we should now go to our nice icebreaker rooms. Yes.
So here's the plan for the icebreaker. There are a lot of you. And I want you to pretend we're back in the day when we had a spread of coffee and donuts. So when you get put in your room with 4 other people, please, there's a room, there's a table with 3 donuts on it. And I want you to pretend that you're at that table reaching for a donut and you're making small talk while you're thinking, is it okay if I reach for that donut? Is it socially acceptable for me to take the last one? So your job is to make small talk, to introduce yourself, to find who these other people are that you're about to take the last donut from. My goal for these breakout rooms is that at the end of the time, the 4 people in that room, you should have about 4 people in your room, you can come back and tell me a work commonality you have. Maybe you're all techies and you have a favorite programming language. Maybe you're a mix of techies and clinicians, but you all deal with bones. I don't know. Find the work commonality while you're in these breakout rooms. The idea is that you're standing in front of the coffee table and you're making small talk. We've got to practice it because hopefully someday we'll be really back to it, right? You should be slowly, hopefully now, being sent to your breakout rooms. Hopefully, fingers crossed, if technology works. You will automatically be taken out. You'll be automatically brought back in. So don't worry, just talk to each other while you're there. Hopefully it's all working. Hopefully the magic is working, maybe. The first
Lindsay is working the magic. It might take some time because there's so many of us.
Excellent. So I'll be leaving in 10 seconds.
Yeah.
And I'll see you back here soon.
This is fun.
Hi, can you hear me? Is that Margaret?
I can hear you. Sorry, I'm late.
I just got a weird thing because I was briefly in another room with some other people, and then it said join here, so I've joined here. I don't know what the other room was I was in.
This should have been your breakout room. And he's
And Mandy's joining, hopefully.
I don't even know which room I'm in. Which room number is this? Or am I just in the main one? Huh.
Hang on.
Well, this can be a breakout room, frankly. 3 of us. Happy with it.
Okay. Oh, Mandy's in. Okay. Didn't realise.
Brilliant. Okay. So, Margaret, do you want to start us off with? Wait, where did they go now?
Hang on.
Behold the power of
I think
teams.
we need to go back to the main group.
Oh, I see. Hang on one moment. Let me just
I don't know
assign you guys to a room. Sorry, this is all new to me. One moment, please, caller.
Yeah.
There we go. You should be going somewhere shortly. Maybe. Yep. Oh my goodness, this is taking a while. Okay. Hello, Diana.
Hello.
Hi there. So everybody's in their breakout rooms. I'm just trying to figure out how long they're going to be in there because we went in a few minutes late, but I'm going to go ahead and assign you to one because there's a couple of other people just showing up too. So the idea with the icebreaker, forgive us, is you're in a room with a table and 3 donuts, but there are 4 of you there. So have fun trying to make the conversation of what's socially acceptable about taking the last donut and introducing yourselves and that sort of thing. So,
Oh my goodness. So I'm coming just to see what happens at these things.
oh dear. Okay. Well, first there's an icebreaker with some donuts, hypothetical donuts, and then there's
Yeah.
we're going to come back and the speakers are going to be going through their presentation. So if you want to pop in and pop out throughout from now to 12:05, feel free just to click on the main meeting link and come back in if you want.
Okay. Oh well, I'll go to the icebreaker and just see who's there, and then I'll.
Okay.
But I might have to dip in and out. I'm just kind of coming to observe, so I'll let my intentions be clear.
Okay, that sounds good.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
This is my main.
Quick. Oh, that's quick.
Very impressive. This is very impressive.
So as we've come back in, please remember to mute yourselves. And so we were hopefully all chatting away in our nice little small rooms. Hopefully you have met somebody interesting or a set of interesting people and you found a commonality. In my room, everybody had some sensors, either very, very, very low sensors. Somebody was building sensors out of paper-based. Others were doing interstitial fluids. Others were slapping the sensor right on somebody's ankle. I'll use the data from a sensor. So that was our common theme. At this point, I believe we should all be back here if the magic has worked properly. And we will be moving on to listening to our speakers. So this is our listening point. This is make sure we're all muted except for our speakers who'll be coming up in order. Lindsay, are you ready to drive the slides? Can you share your screen?
Yes, yeah, I'm in. How do we advance the slides? Will you be doing it or will they be doing it?
Ah, very good question.
I'll be doing
Lindsay,
it.
Lindsay is going to be doing the entire slide deck, and you just have to say next slide and she'll advance it for you, okay?
But Lindsay doesn't have all the slides.
Does Lindsay not have all the slides?
Because what I was asked to provide was one slide.
No, you only get one slide.
You're supposed to only have one slide.
Let's
Couple
be.
of quick- Are they gonna
And
advance?
this is where we find, the academics. We have to say just
Oh.
one more thing.
Then I have to probably drop out right now.
Well, we could follow. We could have that conversation in the background whilst we start. I suppose. H. Yes.
Absolutely, absolutely. In fact, our first set of agenda is we're starting on the medicine side. So our very first speaker, Professor John Primrose.
John, please. Thank you.
Okay, well, good morning. I'm John Primrose from surgery, and in fact, Alex Murnazami are going to do a double act. So I'm going to start off, and at a certain point, he's going to take over. So just to start off, I think there's huge opportunities between medicine and particular cancer and technology engineering. We had some plans some years ago, but that went all up in flames, quite literally, with optoelectronics, and we've never really done much or anything since. So this is a really good opportunity to get started. Next slide, please. So here's just a shopping list of things that we think we could do, and we're just going to talk to them about them very, very briefly, just over a few minutes, just to give an idea where we might be going. So next slide, please. So talking about image analysis, next slide, please. So you don't need to look at this in much detail, but this is about colorectal cancer and how you can molecularly categorize it based on the gene expression data. Next slide, please. Next slide. And by these categorizations, you can identify that the tumor has different prognosis, either originally or when it relapses. So knowing about this would be an advantage in terms of how you manage the patient. Next slide, please. Now, I'm currently involved in a group with Oxford who are indeed using image machine learning type approaches in order that you can actually get this categorization that is very expensive and uses genetic analysis, but just based on the simple H&E slides. So this is already being done, but there is a lot of refinement that we can certainly do, and this is an area that all the technologists might be interested in. Next slide, please. So similarly, radiomics. Next slide, please. This is an MRI scan of a patient who's got kilograms of cancer in his liver. Now, I took this out in 1995, and he's still alive. Why do some tumors are amenable to simple surgical treatment and others not? Well, the radiomic characteristics on MRI is an area of great interest, and we currently have an MRI project going to try and establish whether you can establish what the tumor characteristics are just from the MRI scan without the need to biopsy. Next slide, please. So one of the things particularly laparoscopic or robotic surgeons are interested in is where is the margin of the tumor. If in open surgery, you can feel often where the tumor is, but not always, and knowing where it is certainly would be a major advantage. Next slide, please. Now, we have some means at the moment. This uses indocyanine green fluorescence, and the modern laparoscopic kit does allow us to do this, but actually it's not very good. So tumor margin detection using imaging of some sort is certainly an area that is of great interest and I think could be developed. Next, please. So next thing is tissue destruction. Very often we cut out cancer, but being able to destroy it is also used, and radio frequency, microwave, and irreversible electroporation are currently available commercial devices. But what we will wonder whether there are other ways.
John, we're nearly time. If
Yes,
you could
all right.
finish up, thank
Right,
you.
yeah, fine. Next slide. Next slide. Alex, go. Alex.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for the opportunity to talk to you today. I'm just going to very briefly start by saying pretty much everything that we can do in surgery, and surgery at times is seen very much like a blunt force, can be made better, and we're hoping to do so with the collaborations we might set up with you. So if I could have the next slide, please. So this is just to show some existing equipment that we might use to go through some operations which involve cutting through bone. Hammers and chisels and also fine drills, but both of these can lead to substantial bleeding, and things that control bleeding are likely to make a massive mark, obviously, in very major surgery. These days we can do an awful lot for cancers, and a lot of that relies on control of bleeding. Next slide, please. So we've got two slides here, one on the left, one on the right. The one on the left is before and the one on the right is after, and it just shows some of the size of blood vessels that we're dealing with, and these can lead to catastrophic, immediately life-threatening hemorrhage. On the right side, we've taken all of those, and again, this is just to highlight anything that can be used that helps us technologically to deal with vessels of this size would be really helpful. Currently, the highest level of technology that we have allows us to manage 5 to 6 millimeter vessels only. Next slide, thank you. And then we're talking about filling holes. When we do big cancer surgery, sometimes we leave really big holes behind. And again, things that allow us to fill those holes would be really helpful. Next slide, please. These are some examples of patients that have had surgery, and you can see we leave very big defects sometimes behind. Next one. And again, gory photos. And the next slide. And again, these are some of these operations. In fact, we've got one today that's planned for about 25 hours. We're going to leave a very sizable cavity in patients' pelvises and abdomens, and it's how we then engineer and fill those defects, hopefully with help from you. Can we move to the next slide? And you can see that we use tissue. This is what we're looking at on the left-hand side of the field is cow skin that's been engineered and decellularized that we then use. And in the middle slide, we've used it to reconstruct someone's abdominal wall. And in the lower slide, you can see it deep in the pelvis, reconstructing someone's pelvic floor. This is a very simple thing that's come on the market relatively recently and is really changing things for some patients, but it's not ideal because you can see it doesn't really go near as much as filling it. It's just a sheet. And actually, again, things that allow us to fill holes would be really helpful. Next.
Alex, I do have to stop you now. We are running out. We have no more time. But
I think we finished actually as well.
Yeah, cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we have our next speaker, and that's Alex Kermack. Oh. Nice background, Francesco. Well done.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to talk to you today. I'm going to talk to you a bit about engineering in obstetrics and gynecology. Next slide, please. So there's lots of opportunities in obstetrics and gynecology to improve the way we do things with innovative and new designs. I would have given some more gory pictures had I known that Prof Primrose and Prof Mazanami were going to go before me. So, you know, we've moved on a lot since from doing open surgery. We now do lots of laparoscopic and keyhole surgery. We've also got multiple different ways to perform an assisted delivery. So in the bottom picture here, we've got a Neville Barnes forceps, a Ventouse, and then most recently an Ojon device, which is thought to be able to give a safe delivery to the baby without causing too much trauma to the mother, and it's planned that that will be used in the third world to do assisted delivery. Next slide, please. So within Southampton, we've already started some collaborations with engineering, particularly with Professor Chung, and we now have a new way to investigate unexplained subfertility. And this is using an in vivo sensing platform to measure temperature and pH. So in about a third of patients, we have no idea why why they suffer with subfertility. And there's a question about whether we whether fluctuations in temperature and pH are what are part of what causes this. And this is a device that's been developed and is going to be used in research shortly to try and investigate this. One of the big problems is improving IVF success rates. So about 3 million children are born worldwide to IVF, and about 60% of these are in Europe. But one of the biggest challenges is choosing which embryo. So we get about somewhere between 8 and 12 embryos per patient. Obviously, that depends on age and other factors, but that would be an average. And picking the best one to put back is important because it minimises the number of IVF cycles, means that only one needs to be put back, which minimises the chance of multiple pregnancies. So this is really important. In recent years, we've improved culturing methods. So what we used to do was take them out of the incubator, look at them, and then put them back. Say that one's prettiest, we'll put that one back into the lady. Now we've got time-lapse incubators, which allow us to look at them undisturbed. And we also use single-step media. So that gives us lots of information, but we want more information. Next slide, please. So one of the areas that we would like to get more information on is the metabolomics of the embryo. So can we look at an embryo undisturbed and look at the components of the media and how it uses those components of the media and how it produces different components of the media, and therefore predict which embryo is healthiest and which one to put back.
Alex, 30 seconds, please.
Okay. So it needs to be non-invasive. It needs to be quick because we need to do it at the time so that we can choose the best one to put back. And that's what I would like to think about today. But I am in a busy clinic, so if you email me, I would love to talk to you about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alex. Now we have the next speaker.
Looks like that's me.
Yes.
Yes. So I am Francesco Forconi. I am a hematologist with strong focus in what are called B cell. Can we see the slide? I can't see it. Yeah.
We can see your one slide.
Yes, I was asked to do one slide, so I've done one slide different from the rest of the surgeons from which I know. So I am a hematologist, and my interest is in a type of blood cancers called B cell chronic lymphocytic leukemia or follicular lymphoma. These are the most common types of blood cancers. They all come from a system that is called lymph node. So this is a multicellular system in which really the problem is that it's almost so far there is no artificial model able to recapitulate the functional characteristics of the interactions between the focus cell of lymphomas, that is called a B cell, these cells at the center, and its interaction through several receptors, of which the main one, the key receptor, is called B cell receptor. This normally engages with antigen, that is some sort of molecule that is recognized on the surface of a pathogen, can be virus, can be bacteria, can be fungi, in this multi-complex structure that is the lymph node. Or in the case of lymphoma on the right, it is a sugar. This is a tumor-specific molecule, which is chopped in a way that it is only on the tumor cells. There is no other cell in the system that has it. And this recognizes lectins. It has the lectin has a specific name. It's called DC sign, which interacts with macrophages. So to say that through analysis of this B cell receptor, we have an immediate need from the engineers to help us develop models that we like to call organoids, other people call it spheroids, in which there is the opportunity to put many different cells, many different cell types together to see their interaction and to see how they signal into the tumor cell. The classical model that we have been using is cell signaling through calcium mobilization upon engagement of the B cell receptor. This has a tricky issue in which we look at the mobilization of calcium from a bulk of cells, while each individual tumor cells will have a different kinetics, a different timing of treatment, a different way to engage through the B cell receptor, so the level of the calcium mobilization will be different. And I think there has been already some efforts within colleagues in our B cell group to interact with engineers and try to investigate the cells at single cell level. Then we have a second analysis that is the structure of the
30 seconds, please. Thank you.
Yeah, the structure of the B cell receptor, and that is with Max Crispin, which required sophisticated models in which we look at overall glycopeptide analysis, binding kinetics, and structural analysis. Then we have need to develop technologies of super resolution imaging. So we see how these molecules, how these receptors move within the cell, on the cell. And then we have a problem of prognosis and stratification of the presence, absence of different characteristics on the B cell receptor, which requires a lot of computing, and so a lot of data management with long reads of sequences that requires big computers, and that certainly requires, for the gain of time, the development of technologies much more sophisticated than the one that we are using, all for the purpose of developing monoclonal antibodies that we are now developing with Mark Krag. So these are the many opportunities that we would like to engage with the engineers for.
Thank you. Thank you, Francesco. We have our next speaker, Tom.
Hi, good morning, everybody. So I've got one slide. I've kept to the rules, unlike my surgical colleagues, and no gory pictures either. What I'd like to do is actually just share some of the concepts around the challenges in respiratory health. No one on this call needs to sort of be able to highlight the issues in respiratory health. COVID is an example of the susceptibility of the human to infection through the lung. And really, there's a global health crisis driven by not only COVID, but underperformance in respiratory medicine, particularly in the third world setting. So the lungs are the major organ of interface with the external environment. The dermatologists may disagree with us, but the lungs are very susceptible to the impact of infection, of pollution, and of environmental challenge. And lung diseases really result as a consequence of a failed resilience to these challenges or to overexposure. And there are many opportunities in engineering to actually understand that interaction and to improve outcome. And we'll think about a few of those. Chronic lung disease drives enormous healthcare burden globally. So the disease I'm interested in is called chronic obstructive lung disease, which is now largely driven by pollution exposure to the lung, and is the third largest cause of death in the world. And 2/3 of respiratory diseases are undiagnosed, and that problem's got a lot worse recently because patients can't access healthcare in the usual way. So looking at ways in which we can make remote diagnosis that can monitor patients' respiratory situation remotely, understand signal to noise within that, and add diagnostic level information is going to be incredibly valuable over the next few years, and that's not going to go away imminently as a challenge. So I see this as a sort of broad opportunity for collaboration. I represent here the Respiratory Biomedical Research Centre respiratory theme. That's a large infrastructure supporting over 100 respiratory researchers at Southampton. We cover all the diseases from cancer to asthma to cystic fibrosis, bronchiectasis, COPD, and beyond. So in adults and in children. So if you have any interest in respiratory disease, just drop me a line and we can connect. I see the main groups of challenges that I'd like to explore with you: how we prevent lung disease by reducing exposure, identifying risk of exposure to harmful agents, and preventing the damage they cause, to detect both lung disease itself, but also triggers to worsening situations, so infection and exacerbation, and how we monitor patients physiologically and symptomatically to intervene in a timely way. Most of what we do is too late, and it'd be good to be able to pick up signals much earlier. And then to encourage patients through technology to actually take their medication regularly, to adopt healthier lifestyles, and how we go about that is an interesting conundrum. And then there's a big box there to open on new interventions. So what are the physical interventions we can offer patients, for example, in lung cancer, in emphysema and other lung diseases, which can actually affect outcome, minimally invasive surgery and other approaches, is advancing rapidly, but there's a long way to go. So lots of challenges there. Looking forward to talking to you and collaborating.
Thank you, Tom. You are actually one of the best timekeeper here. Moving on to the next speaker, Alex Mimazami. Alex, you're there? Yeah.
It's already done it, Ying. We did it together.
We've caught up. That's good. We'll move on to James.
So I didn't take too much time, really.
Not at all. We gave you 3, we gave Alex 3. It was perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. Good duet. So we move on then to James.
Good morning, everyone. My name's James Badger. I have 2 roles at the University Hospital Southampton. One is a clinical innovation fellow, which aims to sort of support the commercial team with the development of clinical innovations. And then my other role is a research fellow in anaesthesia, working with Mike Grocott. I'm delighted to be here. I'm sure you're aware that biotechnology and healthcare developments require a huge financial resource investment and in-depth research and clinical trials. And so developments require a complex interdisciplinary team and are full of risk and uncertainty. In order to increase the efficiency of developing medical devices and technology from concept through to commercial adoption, I'm very keen to help facilitate close working with external designers, engineers and scientists with medical practitioners, healthcare providers and also patients. One thing that I'd like to pitch in particular to is the CIPHER project, which is going to my sort of research role. This is a clinical research program led by Mike Grocott that offers considerable scope for collaborating with both electronics and computer science. The idea of the program is to develop novel ways of measuring risk using real-time data around the time of surgery. Currently, risk prediction is largely based on clinician experience and preference, but we feel it could be supported using technology. So we're generating a high-resolution multimodal data set from patient record, national data, bedside monitors and wearables to predict risk in real time. This prediction would then be fed back to clinicians via a real-time dashboard and would inform shared decision-making at key decision points. The idea being that when the risk prediction is taken together with clinicians' information and recommendations and the patient's values and preferences, the best choice can then be made for any individual patient. And there's vast scope for collaboration with electronics and computer science. And we're currently already working with engineers and computer sciences, both within the university and we're developing and evaluating sensors, signal processing methods, and also the risk algorithms. We're seeking to understand how data-driven technologies should be tested and regulated, both in terms of validating the accuracy and also fairness across different protected identities, and then determining what clinicians and patients need to know to effectively apply these technologies. So in summary, CIPHER is an incredibly fertile ground for multidisciplinary working and innovation. This project encompasses data science, enterprise, machine learning, sensors, signal processing, smart materials, ethics, regulatory. So whether you're an engineer or a clinician interested in any of these areas, then please do get in contact with me, and you can just about see my email at the bottom of the screen there. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, James. Harry Ackerman.
So good morning, I'm Harry Ackerman. I'm an anaesthetist in the Trust, and I also have been working with Neil White for a few years at the university as well. I put up my initials MBBS and FRCA just to show MBBS, I'm a doctor, FRCA, I'm an anaesthetist. I have no extra training or education about engineering or computer science, but nor do you need it. And I just want to spend my 3 minutes just describing my little career path into the place that I've got to. So next slide, please. So I became consultant in 2008, and I've, with no real research background behind me, I was always amazed by the gruesome things that surgeons were able to do to patients in theatres, yet not able to show any outcome data as to how they were getting on with things. Patients were allowing major surgery to be done to them, and yet surgeons didn't have their outcome data. And at that stage, I was getting into ultrasound-guided regional anaesthesia, which was a new specialty in anaesthetics, and we were sending patients home with numb arms and numb legs after very major surgery. But we had no idea what happened to the patients after the nerve blocks wore off when the pain came on. And I was inquisitive to know, but I was a bit too lazy to phone all the patients up. So I went to a local health software company called Riomed, and together we developed a product called iProms, which was a very automated way of following up patients following their surgery, finding out how they were getting on. And there were some questionnaires that we could send out, which are very dry questionnaires. Some of them had scores associated with them, so you could track the score to see whether patients were getting better or worse. But essentially, it was I felt an antiquated way of monitoring patients following surgery. And I got introduced to Neil at the university, and together we then started developing this little device on the left-hand side of the screen, and it was a step counter. So we could monitor patients' steps before and after operations. And at the end of the day, the step counter gets put into the cradle where it gets recharged, and also information is uploaded to the cloud. The screen is able to display physio information for the patients and also collect information from the patients on things like pain scores, things that are quite difficult to measure. But as we were doing this was about 2015, we sort of realized that smartphones, smartwatches were coming out, and there was really never going to be a strong business case for anything like this. And then out of the blue one day, really, Neil said to me, would knowing respiratory rate be of interest to you guys? And I said, absolutely. And he had stumbled across a device called a capaciflector, which had come off patent from NASA in about 2012, and they'd been playing around with it at the university and noticed that it had a very strong signal, which correlated well with the respiratory rate. And so for the last 3 or 4 years, we've been developing this device, and we've done our first patient trial with it. And we went for some funding with EPSRC, which sadly we didn't get. But then at the end of last year, we got just under £1 million from NIHR to further develop the capaciflector. And we will be doing some studies with James Badger, who talked previously on their CIPHER project as well. So next slide, please. So I think this is really a message for the clinicians out there who are thinking of getting involved in projects like this. So as a clinician, you have a vast amount of knowledge already, and you don't need to have an engineering or computer science background to have something to offer these projects, because all these sorts of projects need a multidisciplinary team. And it's pretty clear, really, that as an anaesthetist, I couldn't just go out and create a respiratory rate monitor, but nor can the engineers without some clinical input as well. So I can't code. I'm no sort of have-a-go engineer. My input and the clinician's input really is about marrying and molding these solutions and the problems together. So don't think that because you've got no engineering background, you've got nothing to contribute to these projects. Do get involved, get engaged. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that very good advice, Harry. And our last person for medicine side, Michael Arden-Jones. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah. So I'm here to talk about the skin. I'm an academic dermatologist, and as you probably, well, we all know, obviously, the skin is the largest organ in the body, and that's great because we can see it, and we can feel it, and we can sample it as very, very easily. But one of the challenges with skin is that the number of diseases that affect the skin are sort of a log-fold greater than pretty much any other organ. That may be because we can classify them, but the problem is that we aren't very good at training doctors to recognize them. And the other thing is that we've got a huge advantage with skin in that we can actually get directly to the problem. We can apply treatments to the skin. But the challenges with the skin are that the skin is very well evolutionarily developed to protect itself. So we have a dead layer of skin. You can in fact see that just behind me, the basket weave pattern. That's about 30 microns of dead cells on the top of our skin. And that stops any kind of drugs and other chemicals we'd like to get into the skin getting in very easily. And also it slightly hides the inflammatory processes within the skin. So I'm just going to plug one aspect of skin disease. Obviously, there's stacks of opportunities for people interested in imaging and other type of mathematical modeling of pathways of inflammatory disease. But I'm just going to focus on one area of skin disease that I think would be interesting to see if anyone out there is intrigued to work on. And that's this ability that's become recently popular, as you can see some from the papers at the bottom of the slide, that show that you can develop microneedles, which basically can breach this outer dead layer of skin. And so on the left of the slide, you can see examples where people have used that for drug delivery. So that's, I just put a sort of interesting thing where they've developed COVID vaccine to be delivered by patches, obviously needle-free, huge advantage for the developing world and obviously potentially for the UK as well. But needle-free vaccine delivery has been shown to be more effective through delivery through the skin than injection through the arm, as we've done it traditionally. So that's a really efficient way to deliver vaccine. So drug delivery as well for other inflammatory diseases. And you can see in the middle that there's electrodes can be applied in the patches. We can sample, we get real-time data, and on the right also we can actually get biological fluid sampling through these microneedles. So I think microneedles are really exciting in the sense that they can offer us lots of ways to get into human in vivo testing and understanding in real time, and then the concept of drug delivery as well. And you can see I've highlighted the different materials. So I thought material science should really help us here. There's lots of different materials that have been used for these types of microneedles, and I think this is a really exciting possibility. We've got a great clinical research team in dermatology. We've got the molecular side, we've got mathematical side going, we've got links with modeling and Naranjan, etc. What we need now is some in vivo real-time monitoring, and anyone who's interested in sensors, development of new material science to go onto the skin, and drug delivery, I think this is a really exciting area. So it's missed out the red boxes at the bottom of my slides, but all these papers are 2021 or 2020 in big journals. So I think there's a lot to be done here. We'd really like to get that set up in Southampton. So short and sweet, I hope.
Oh, thank you, Michael. That's actually a very, very interesting area. We're just going to swap slides to the engineering piece on technology, but it's really exciting to see that there's huge amount of communication in the chat box. Some of them have made me chuckle. But there have been now numerous connections. I've lost count, but we will actually be capturing all of these to for record, but also if you've forgotten who you've spoken to or who they are, please, you can also email us and we can remind you or send you the information. And please take your time to look at the links, because there have been some very interesting questions being posed. For example, someone's just asked about movement sensors. Please respond and take down their information so you can then make a date, as I suggested earlier on, to follow on with some of these questions and suggestions. Lindsay, are we nearly there?
While we're waiting for Lindsay, please keep using the chat. I think it's wonderful. In fact, I almost wonder if it's working better than it has around the donut table. We were restricted earlier by where the coffee urn was and who had access to it, and now people are communicating across the room, as it were, and during the talks, which is wonderful. We're not sitting silently.
And yes, and somebody wants to know who's working on hearing. I'm sure there's loads of people working on hearing, so please respond to Helen. And yeah, so continue to put chats in, make your contacts within the chats while the talks are going on. That's no problem. Oh, phone numbers.
Wow, we didn't really mean dates,
That's
people.
quick. The lockdown is going to be over, so that's the one thing. That's good.
Lindsay, whenever you're ready with the slides, we are too.
Yes, yes, but we're actually on time, so that's really good. I
just have one more.
Excellent. We just had to insert some new slides, swap it around, so that's why we had to change the slide deck, but it won't take too long. Yeah, and what else was that? Yeah, there's some very useful links actually. For example, the software groups links that's just been put on. For those of you who want to be thinking about changing background and so on, there's also earlier on in the meeting, Lindsay has put on some of the some instructions on how to change your background if you are not familiar with that. Just so you can then, when we move to the breakout, it's easier, I suppose, when your video is on to know who you are, and without sort of extensive introduction of 50 people around the room.
While we're still waiting for Lindsay, so I mean, hopefully these conversations will kind of get you talking to the right people. And there are some immediate questions of, what are the right next steps? We're obviously not all going to pop a proposal out next week. Usually in past Clinicians Meet Engineers, we talked about some of the very baby steps that we could be doing to help these conversations happen. Interdisciplinary is really hard because we use words that are the same and yet have not the same meaning in many cases. And so there's a conversation that has to happen between us as we learn each other. Some activities in the past that we have found very helpful. Sharing a PhD student is a wonderful way. ECS has GDP projects where you get a team of 4 to 5 MEng students to build you something, a prototype for you to feel, think, get your hands on that real problem. In fact, I believe that some of Neil's work has come directly from GDP projects with clinicians. We also have some MSc projects, although that's harder. It depends on the quality of the MSc students coming through and who is assigned to them. But there are lots of different mechanisms out there to try to jumpstart these relationships. And I'm happy to, if you ever have a question on how to run any of them or get your hands on any of them, to explain the processes and how they work. It looks like we have our slide deck up and ready. So Kushik, on to you.
Oh, well, good morning, everyone. But before I start this, I just want to say one word about what Ed just said, that we have some biomedical engineering degree as well, so where we can accommodate quite a lot of students for their individual projects in third year. So, okay, so obviously this morning's talks were absolutely brilliant and very much exciting. So I am going to talk about a little bit about what we actually do. So next slide, please. So I am a physicist by education, and now I work on signal processing, particularly for cardiology, neurology, psychiatrists and rehabilitation experts. Somebody recently just dropped a message saying who works on movement thingy, and we have done quite a lot of work on movement thingy already. But the main thing that we try to do is that we really try to exploit as much information as possible from seemingly simple physiological signals. Because I have this experience that every now and then people say that, oh, this signal is very simple and you don't get much information about it. But the problem is that my question is, are we actually understanding the language of that signal? So from that perspective, I think I have seen a few talks this morning, particularly from Tom Wilkinson, Francesco, and James, that where we can think that we can contribute quite a lot. Anyway, but that quest of what is the right method of understanding the language of a signal essentially led us to 3 different types of works. One is identifying new features for aiding accurate diagnosis anytime, anywhere. That means wearables, non-wearables, in mobile environment. In fact, we have run most of the works for mobile environments. Predicting an impending episode, whether this is chronic or acute, and management of chronic diseases. Next slide, please. So basically, in terms of our work, we have developed several automated tools that are currently being used in different European hospitals for research purposes, including our Southampton. And our holistic signal processing plus machine learning type of approach actually gives some of the concrete examples that I'm just putting over here, and then you can see what it actually implies. One thing is to predict an impending arrhythmic episode, especially AF and VF, but any other types of irregular heartbeats as well. We do have automated analysis of ECG for continuously monitor heart condition anytime, anywhere. So that is applicable for all the wearables, wireless, and also even in the clinic and also at home. Everything we can do, and we can do it in real time. We can track the heart condition of the person in real time. That has come out from a big European project. We have now the methodology for simulating neural signal propagation characteristics from one region of the brain to the other, given, this is important, given the geometric property of white matter tracks between these two regions. You know what it means. You know what it means from neurodegenerative diseases and so on. This is something that we have very recently done. Tools for automated analysis of functional and structural brain connectivity for early diagnosis and management of neurodevelopmental and neurodegenerative diseases. Basically, I'm talking about mental diseases as well as the dementia and etc. We have developed the tools with which we can analyze all these things. Next slide, please. We can identify, this is the initial indication that we have. We can actually identify some high-risk children at birth who are vulnerable for neurodevelopmental disorders. And I'm actually working with pediatric neurologist colleagues from Southampton for this. We do have remote delivery, intervention delivery system for children growing up with neurodevelopmental disorders. We have done lots of work on real-time prediction of the impending epileptic seizure episodes, where we used EEG signals in a different way, not in the conventional way. Whatever I'm saying is not in the conventional way. And we have complete system assisting home-based stroke rehabilitation, where we do movement tracking, analysis of the data, and everything. In fact, a part of that now I have
30 seconds, please.
Yep. And we have remote CVD management system. Next slide, please. So basically, the possibility is enormous at this moment. We can contribute in dementia, early detection and prevention of CVD. We talk about closed loop stimulation, neurostimulation, and heart-brain interaction. And I can also see how we can contribute quite a lot on respiratory diseases as well. So that's where I will end. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Koshy. So we have Kate next. Kate, thank you.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. I'm Kate Farahi. I'm an assistant professor working in the Vision Learning and Control Group. So I work on machine learning and deep learning, particularly applied to sensor data, and I'm really interested in health applications. So some of this research includes fundamental problems in machine learning, which I won't go into today. But some of the applications I've worked on include predicting Parkinson's disease from actually keyboard typing data. So that's one project I worked on a few years ago, and I'm interested in working on that further. I've worked on digital contact tracing and digital epidemics. So this is work I did in 2014, and actually we published a paper and that appears to be the first digital contact tracing work using Bluetooth data. And so we're updating this work in light of COVID. I am working on some medical image related problems with Professor Naranjan. So we're looking at transfer learning and how to make predictions really well with limited amount of data. And we're using some novel techniques such as cascade learning in that domain. We've also done some work on predicting COVID from X-ray data, but we have limited data, as is the case for most of the applications I'm working on. I'm also doing some work on X-ray computed tomography. And this is, trying to reduce the radiation by using deep learning and machine learning to interpolate between samples, thereby reducing the radiation required. And one of the applications recently that we're looking at is breast cancer and mammography. What I wanted to focus on today was human activity recognition. So human activity recognition means, using sensors of different sorts, wearable sensors, smartwatches, even mobile phones, to try to use, continuous time series data to predict what activity someone's doing. So the data we have access to is, these are data sets that have been collected and made available publicly. And the activities are quite simple, such as sitting versus standing, versus going upstairs and downstairs. But I'm interested in understanding how this can be really useful in the medical domain. So the issue we have with a lot of wearable sensor data is that it's very noisy. So moving forward, I'm actually very interested in understanding how sensors can be used on skin and more type of biosensors to continuously monitor behavior for predictions related to health. So I would say the main issue that I face in my research is understanding how this work can be applied most effectively to clinicians, and how we can really ask questions that would really help clinicians in their daily work. So I'll be moderating one of the breakout rooms, so I look forward to speaking to you there. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Next speaker is Dan.
Hi, Ian, can you hear me? Hopefully
Yep,
you can
we
all
can. Loud
hear
and
me. Perfect. My name's Dan Spencer. I'm a lecturer in the Biomedical Electronics Research Group. I'm going to start with a slight tweak to the title. Actually, a lot of you might have been expecting the art of the possible in sensors. I'm actually going to turn it around and talk about sensing, in particular sensing single cells, tissues, layers, and give you an example of the field with a few examples along the way. I've got a single slide. I've labelled it sections 1 to 4. Hopefully you can start to follow. Apologies for it being a little bit busy. And also just to comment, there's lots and lots of people, colleagues in this area, I know, from engineering, working in a number of these different fields. So hopefully we'll see a lot of you in the sensors breakout room. So lab on a chip, starting figure 1A, lab on a chip systems aim to bring conventional diagnostics out of the centralized labs to the point of need. So remote sensing, remote diagnostics. And actually this has been enabled by lots of techniques which we borrowed from the semiconductor industry. And actually these have opened up a world of opportunity in microfluidics, nanofluidics. I just don't have enough time to go through all of them. So microfluidics, this is the control of very small volumes of liquids. You can manipulate them. One of the examples of this is actually being able to sequentially mix your reagent, your sample, with lots of different drugs, compounds in a controlled way. An example of using this in 1B is a cartridge that mixes whole blood with a set of reagents, very precise control, and actually enables you to count single cells and do a full blood count, which is a really important diagnostic marker. Within microfluidics, micro sensors, you can also do things like taking single biological cells across a wide array and bringing them in contact with one other cell, and then looking for different markers. So, for example, looking at fluorescence to monitor calcium. There's an example there where you've got 6 cells. One of those is showing slightly brighter fluorescence and calcium signaling. Actually, this gives you lots of information looking at rare and outlier cells. You can then take those individual cells, take them out, and do further analysis with them. For example, looking at immunodominance. Moving on to section 2, there's lots of different things you can do with microfluidics. One of those is you can pass single cells along there. So figure 2a shows a sort of time course. You've got a round cell in the top left that, as it goes through the channel, it deforms. Now, the degree the cell deforms is really important. It's linked to many underlying physical conditions. You can tell things, the mechanical properties of cells have been linked to cell cycle, cancer malignancy, leukocyte activation, stem cell differentiation. So actually probing biophysical properties, electrical, mechanical, single cells is really important. An example.
30 seconds, please.
Okay, so just a couple of other different examples. Moving on to section 3, organ on chip. So microfluidics allows you to control the microenvironment in 3D. You can control oxygen, look at other different biomarkers, and we can also measure single bacteria and use that for susceptibility testing of antibiotics, things like that. Thanks very much. Hopefully see some of you in the census breakout room.
Yep, indeed. People who are interested can also catch up there then. Next speaker is Michael.
Thanks, Yang. So my name's Professor Michael Boniface. I'm the Director of the IT Innovation Centre in Electronics and Computer Science, and I lead a team of some 20 engineers cutting across cybersecurity, data governance, and health data science in this context. Next button, please. So I've got some animations. So I cheated by having multiple animations. So we exist in a world where we're seeing our society being increasingly digitized. This cuts across health, obviously, but also increasingly bringing together other determinants of people's and human behavior in communities. So in that space, we're dealing not only with data which is sort of highly curated and collected, but also routine data sets, both within health systems and those collected and generated from digital health platforms and various smart devices deployed into our environment. Next, please. And the challenge with that, of course, is that the data is messy. There's lots of issues around how representative it is of our communities, and the sorts of things that we can do with that data around classification, stratification, and prediction has meaning not only to clinicians but also to patients, because the actions that we want to them to take in terms of behavioural change and nudge is extremely important. So this is not just a technical challenge, this is a socio-technical challenge and involves co-design and co-creation for adoption and acceptance of those solutions. And we have a number of projects looking at the boundaries of what would be digital and data science, and how clinicians but also patients can be incorporated into processes of design of algorithms and also the applications of those algorithms. Next slide, please. So I'd like to go through a few examples of the sorts of things that we've been working on. So this piece of work with Tom Wilkinson, this is using data from reports provided by patients who have COPD and using that to make predictions about COPD exacerbation. We have some examples that show we can predict 3 days in advance, and that allows for intervention and prevention to reduce the severity of exacerbation. Next, please. Another one is looking at real simple gadgets. You would have seen this. There's a program called COVID Oximetry at Home, and this gadget here costs £20 and has resulted in a 60 million program which has been deployed for the last wave of COVID and the creation of virtual wards supporting remote monitoring of patients. This is creating some really interesting data sets. So now we have the full trajectory of disease from the point of presentation at primary care through to step down from hospitals, and that's a hugely important data set, both relevant now but also parallels that can be used for other types of conditions. Next, please. We then have a project which is really interesting. It's about looking at determinants of health over the life course, bringing together things like birth cohort data sets with routine data sets, see if we can find new clusters of multimorbidity, look at determinants of that multimorbidity through things like social determinants, bringing in data sets from social studies of birth cohorts and connecting that to routine data. That can then lead to better intervention and preventative medicine. And finally, this is a piece of work that we're collaborating with Neil White and the emergency department at UHS. And using machine learning, we can explain changes in admissions and factors contributing to admission just by looking at the data itself. So what this graph shows here is that, a relatively simple machine learning admissions model, we can use algorithms to determine what factors drive the predictions. And on the left-hand side, we've got the major factors which were driving admissions during COVID. And then, we had the event of the COVID pandemic. We can see the way that behaviours and presentations to emergency departments have changed. It's interesting for the hospitals to see that, but it's also interesting.
Michael, 30 seconds, please.
Yeah, it's the last bit. It's interesting from an algorithmic perspective because we need to develop algorithms that are robust to these sorts of changes, and studying events such as this helps us to prove that. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Michael. And Steve is the last speaker for this section. Thank you, Steve. Do we have Steve?
Sorry, classic mistake. Sorry. Yeah, good morning. I'm Steve Beebe, head of the Smart Electronic Materials and Systems Group within ECS. So as a group, we work on a variety of smart materials, electronics and sensors, and develop smart systems that can monitor the environment, capture and process and report data, and perform actions if required. And very much, a lot of the work we do is very much applied, so applications driven. So we do work on a variety of smart materials. So, for example, strain sensing materials that alter their electrical properties in response to applied forces, or materials that emit light, for example. And I'll talk more about that a bit later. But I think that there's a huge range of smart materials. They are already widely used in clinical settings. So an example is piezoelectric materials, which are used to generate and detect ultrasonic waves in medical imaging applications. So another aspect of research I wanted to mention is adding smart functionality to otherwise normal materials that are not normally smart. And the main example of this is functionalizing textiles. So developing electronic or e-textiles. And the goal of this research is to develop e-textiles as a platform technology. And this has obvious applications in wearables. So we all wear clothes most of the time, hopefully, and textiles are a comfortable and familiar platform for most people. So the vision for e-textiles is to integrate the sensing and electronic functionality into a fabric in a manner that doesn't alter the appearance or the feel of the textile, all the way we have to treat the textile, so we can still machine wash, for example, the clothing. We use a variety of manufacturing methods to achieve this. So, for example, the top left, you can see the flexible circuits that are developed in this filament form using bare silicon chips. And they're so small and narrow they can be integrated within a textile yarn. Or an alternative approach is to use traditional sort of screen printing processes to deposit smart materials onto the fabric itself. So the example you can see there on the bottom left is an array of electrodes that are designed to, they use a material there that's designed to interface very well with the skin without requiring a gel interface layer. And the other picture you can see there is a printed light emitting film. And that brings me very nicely just to one little application that kind of exemplifies this. And that's a smart bandage we're currently developing as part of an Interreg project. Now, this is a really nice example of combining these different technologies. So the smart bandage incorporates electronics and sensors to monitor the condition of the wound. And ultimately, we hope to include this light-emitting films to emit ultraviolet light for the purposes of treating the wound. So this will be a form of ultraviolet germicidal irradiation, so using UV light to kill the bacteria. So obviously the motivation here is to improve the treatment of the wounds, and we are currently preparing an application to undertake a study at the hospital. So I'll be very interested to network with anybody at the hospital, any clinicians interested in that application. And just to say that is obviously only one application. The whole technology can be used for a variety of wearable applications or wherever fabrics can be found. And that's it. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much. So we have now a 2-minute travel time. So grab a coffee and then please click onto the breakout rooms that you are, for those who are allocated to, please, and presenters, obviously you need to go to your respective rooms, and then audience, participants, wherever you please move in and out of rooms, that's absolutely fine. And we will remind you when to come back to the main room. Yeah, Aish, anything else you want to add?
Nope. You can flip between breakout rooms. There should always be somebody there. And our moderating assistants, please remember to take notes. We'll see you in the breakout rooms. There are going to be some of us sitting in this main room. After 2 minutes, I need to get a coffee to help you find the breakout room if you have any questions, okay?
Yeah, so 2 minutes and we'll see you back in the various rooms. Take care.
Yep. Are we some of the stragglers? Does everybody here need help knowing where to go?
I think there's some questions how to get to this. So can we post that again in the chat box with a link? Have you got the link?
Thank you, Neil.
Oh, okay. I'll have to do it in chunks. It says the message is too long.
We still have 30 odd people in the room, not gone yet. People, you should be going to your rooms.
And no dinner for you, no.
There you go. Neil's posted the breakout room links.
I have to do
one by one. Can we do the spreadsheet? Maybe.
It doesn't come up very well. I think one by one is, yeah.
Better. Okay. Right. Do it one by one then. Oh, there's less and less people now. Excellent. I hope they're going to the breakout room and not anywhere else.
We're all still getting our cups of coffee.
I'm still getting coffee, yeah.
Oh, come on, where is it?
Smart materials, please. Okay, smart materials.
We'll get you to smart materials just a moment.
Does the spreadsheet not work then, Aish, with the...
Doesn't come up very nicely.
All right. Oh. There you go, smart material, off you go. What did John say?
John, stop multitasking. Go to your room.
John, off you go. You've missed the link, but the links are here now, so you could take a pick. There are 5 rooms, 6 different rooms you can go to. Take your pick, but Neil is just posting them now one by one, so you can just click when they come up.
Okay.
Which one do you want, Graham?
Sensors. I had the list earlier, but it seems to have disappeared, and I can't find it.
It's there. I've just posted that one.
Oh, have you? Thank you.
Yep.
So we still have to post signal, enterprise, and machine learning.
Machine learning. I've got signal processing. Hang on a sec. Machine learning.
Lindsay, are you still here? Lindsay's gone to the other room. H, how do we capture? It's going to be quite long too. I don't know how to export the chat, if it's possible even.
I think, yeah, we'll just leave it there. We can always come back and you can see the chat in the team itself. So without an export, we can just comb through it. I love how many connections were being made in it today. It was wonderful.
I told you the surgeons are chatty.
It's excellent. It's really wonderful. And I noticed on our side we had a couple folks I recognized as new coming in, so they were from the tech side being particularly chatty as well. Who else is in? Anybody else looking for a home of the 36 people we have in here?
So we got 9 people left. Why are there 9 still here?
Oh, it looks like everybody just put us on hold, which is fine.
Oh, okay.
That's great.
Yeah,
that's
okay.
perfect. So
Yeah.
they put us on hold when they went over to the
How do
other
you
meeting.
see that then?
Perfect.
How do you
Sorry?
see the page?
Oh, I went up to the participant list, and if you bring it up, it says on the right, it says on hold.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I see. Yes. Oh, that's pretty smart.
It's very, very smart, isn't it?
Okay, so we can then now
we can dip in and out of the rooms as we like. Exactly.
Anything we want to say? I think the time is a little bit only. We ran a little bit over, but that's not too bad. And we can catch up. But the only other thing is, was Neil in the audience? Because he wasn't there in my meeting earlier.
Oh no. Oh goodness, has anybody checked his breakout room? I didn't notice. Hopefully he's in his breakout room, but I didn't look.
Because he wasn't at my pre-meet.
Okay. How about this? One of us should go into that room for sure.
Which room is he in?
He's the enterprise one.
Okay.
And then one of us needs to basically make the decision that at around 11:25 to go into each room and in the chat say, don't forget to come back out, at 11:30 or, 11:45-ish. Yeah. Are we good with that? And so who's doing what, just so we know?
Why don't we drop all the moderators a message to say come out at 11:25? So we can go into, so if I go into the top 3 rooms or we each of us go into 2 rooms.
Yeah.
And then we will ping the moderators a message to say, can you remind 11:25, come back to the main session. Now, I bet there will be people who will have lost, would they have lost the main session's link?
So we can make a copy of the mains. How about this? I'll go into all the chats and I'll leave a link and I'll say, remember, please, be here by then. And here's the link when you come back out. One of you, please go to Null's session and make sure that at least somebody's there.
Yeah, I will go to Null's session. I will tell. Shall I do that, or Neil, do you want to do that?
Yeah, I'll do that now.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. So do we need to tell anything about the moderators or not?
I'm going to go into each chat right now.
You're going to go. Okay.
Yep.
Cool.
Okay. And we'll see you. I'm going to be back here around 11:30, just so that if people start coming in, there's a face.
I'll see you at 11:25.
Sure.
30, hang on. Oh yeah, 30, that's fine because it's we've got 15 minutes. 30 is fine. 11:30 is fine. Yeah.
All right, I'll see you then.
I'll see you then.
Okay, bye-bye.
So we do have a short little travel time again. So if you want to grab a cup of tea or go to the loo or something, please do that. And then we are scheduled to recommence at 11:45. But if you're happy to stay in the room, that's no problem as well. Age, did you manage to go around the rooms?
I went to all the rooms. They have the link back here with the reminder to break at 11:30, grab a cup, come back this way by hopefully by 11:40. We can start a little early if everybody's here and yeah, kick it on off.
One of the things that came out was sharing of the participants' details and speakers' emails and things. Obviously, we will have a list of that, and we can share that, can't we?
So I think one of the things we might have to do for GDPR is ask the participants to, whether they would allow us to share it for this event. We can do that via email and then share the list that's been allowed.
Surely, if we've joined, we're consented. I mean, you were.
I would think so.
It's also
actually there might be a better way. If we ask at the end if anybody objects.
Yeah,
that would be the way to do it. If you object, let us know, right?
It's
also a university email, so you'll be able to find them anyway, don't you?
Yeah, exactly. If you share the name, which has been shared in here chats anyways, then university, whatever that, not calendar, the database will tell you the email address anyways.
Mm. And did people find it useful to have that little chat around the sensor area that they're in? John, what did you think? Did you find it useful to have a chit chat about what you discussed in the room?
Which you mean the original coffee or the one just now? What are you talking about? The donut and coffee 4 minutes or just now? Both.
Give us some feedback. What did you like?
I liked everything. I think it was a surprisingly good event, bearing in mind I don't like online meetings particularly. It's really good.
Thank you for that.
And I'm sure the important thing with any of these things is actually not to be enthusiastic at the meeting in isolation, but actually to go to the next step, because that's where things normally break down. You've got lots of good ideas, lots of possibilities, but then, it doesn't maybe always, it maybe doesn't always progress. So, that's the important thing is to get something going after this.
Absolutely. And in fact, that's actually what this final part of the program is about, is kind of what are the big steps we could take? What are the small steps we could take to kind of keep it all moving forward? Because it's been wonderful watching the chats and seeing people make these connections going through. But as you say, John, if it falls apart and we don't take the next step, then it's, what was the point?
Yeah, there's interesting, some remarks in the various different rooms. Some people say they are really in silos. They feel they are working in silos and they actually don't know how to reach out. They actually don't know. So I think something like that is useful, plus sharing the information that the participants that are in here is useful, I think. So hopefully people can find their dates, from this meeting.
It's more than one date thing, isn't it? Because actually, what I think I'm feeling is there's some groups that should come together here that are answering the same as the fundamental questions that could put some big stuff together relatively rapidly. If it's just one date, that's not going to be good. We're going to have to be relatively promiscuous.
So this is getting more and more interesting. So
in a safe and inclusive way.
Depends on your appetite, Tim.
Yeah. So
my appetite's big for this sort of thing.
It is, and so some of what some of what this event was supposed to be about is kind of helping forward those, but if there are next steps that need a little bit extra help like that, I actually think it would be fruitful to know what they are, like what is the next, subgroup that should be formed, and is there an event that should that can be pulled together around that, or the worst case would, as John said earlier, is if it just fizzles and falls apart. So if there's another next step that would be helpful, or to make that happen, it'd be good to know.
The other thing, Aish, that someone mentioned was, particularly because they don't know how to network, is there a way of networking? They want to keep the Zoom or the Teams open and so on. But I mentioned about Worm, which we couldn't obviously introduce.
Called it Worm.
We called it Worm. Because it was great branding, wasn't it? You'll remember it.
Yeah.
But yeah,
go
on. Go on.
Do you want to tell about it?
Aish, go on. You do it.
So what Worm was we realized, even before the pandemic, we realized that these events are great, but in 6 months you'll have forgotten who was that person, and I wasn't quite ready to interact with them yet, but now I am, but I can't remember them. And so, and then the pandemic hit, and actually Ying and I and the IFLS group were we had a little bit of funding to put forward to try to create these little startup projects to help with response to the pandemic. And it was difficult for people both at the hospital and medicine to reach out to the technologists. So we created Worm. So we put our money where our mouth is. I've said that the GDP is a wonderful thing. So what we did is we used the GDP teams to, Ying was the customer. She said, I want this product that allows people to reach out across disciplines and say, I have these problems and here's my issue. Basically think about, Facebooking-ish, but with a work networking reason behind it, not just posting cat pictures. And so the team created a way that allows you to post your problem. It allows you to sort through problems on the other side. It provides a matchmaking facility to try to identify, as we know, cross interdisciplinary is hard. We're not always using the same words. So it has a matchmaking to try to create those matches across different uses of the same word. Unfortunately, at this point, we have a prototype. We do not have a production system. We are hoping that IFLS will host it for us as we get going, and that we'd be able to release it shortly.
Yeah, but we have already got some takers in that other room that I went to. They were like, yeah, go on, you have it.
Can I add something? It would be great. Sorry, Hans Michael, my name. It would be great if we could possibly be at more than one breakout room. So I would have loved to be at 2 or 3 at the same time, but you can't divide yourself. So if this could be repeated probably on a basis, on a regular basis, then you can actually join other breakout rooms as well. Might be helpful.
Thank you for that. So actually, I'm really appreciative. Any and all feedback coming in. Noted, and we will we'll watch it. This was a big step for all of us, taking it virtually. Like I said, I usually center things around donuts and coffee, and we weren't sure what the reaction for this event was going to be. So yeah, it's good feedback that it was actually useful, and we want more opportunities to hit different breakout rooms.
Yeah, thanks for organizing it. You did a great job, both of you.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
So we've got a couple of minutes till 11:45, and then we will have H. You will introduce the next.
Absolutely.
Oh, someone already loves Worm. See, I told you that was a good. Good branding is important, right?
It's supposed to stand for what's on your mind, as a way to, that we're sharing. This is our research interest, and this is where we're going, and I need help with. Obviously, it's a system that will only be particularly useful if people actually get into it and use it. But we'll cross that bridge once we find a host who is willing to host it for us. So I actually think that I would like us to kind of get started now. I have a feeling, as when I posted in the chat, I said everybody be back here by 11:40. So I think we should be absolutely free and ready. Let me just check. John Robinson, are you actually in the audience before I start launching us down the next path?
Hello, yes, I am.
Thank you. Excellent. Okay, so, and Lindsay with the slides, are you up and ready?
I just have the one slide for
That's
ECS,
all we
is
need
that
for
right?
John.
Okay, and it has to be PDF. Is that right, John?
Yep, that's it. One slide, 1 minute.
For real? I love it.
Lightning
Okay.
talks my thing.
I'm all ready. I'll go ahead and share.
Great, thank you. So basically, this last component is trying to take all the wonderful connections that you've made across all these different groups and at least put some ideas in your head about how you can start taking steps forward, because we don't want to lose them. We want to make sure that it's that they come to some fruition. So we have a small series to talk about current ways of doing that. I'm going to turn it over to John Robinson from the Software Sustainability Institute for a few moments. Thanks, John.
Hello, I'm John Robinson. So I have two hats. So I work for the Software Sustainability Institute, which is a national project that's been going for about 10 years to try and improve software and research generally across the UK, and we've had a lot of success. Today, I've got the other hat on, which is as co-director of the Southampton Research Software Group, which is based in ECS. And we have a pool of research software engineers who are available to work on a variety of projects across the university and enterprise projects. So a bit of background, software is fundamental to research. It's the one thing that unites research across all disciplines is their increasing reliance on software, either to produce outputs or as an output itself. A survey by the Software Sustainability Institute found that 92% of academics report they use research software to generate results. 69% said they couldn't do the research without it. 56% are developing their own software, but very few of them have any actual formal training. And that can lead to problems with accuracy, reproducibility, performance, scalability, and it can have an impact on reputation as well as the accuracy of your results and the ability for other people to be able to build on the work and the research that you do. So research software engineers basically sit on that continuum on the top right-hand side of the slide there. They're sort of part way between researcher and software engineer. We have 6 full-time research software engineers in our group. They are all ex-PhDs who have found that they enjoy the process of developing software accurately and reproducibly more than the actual discipline that they work in, which is great because they can then work across a multitude of projects across all disciplines. And as I say, in the last 5 years, we've run, I think that slide is slightly out of date now, we've run nearly 80 projects, a variety of funders, and more recently we've moved into the area of helping people to commercialize their research code. So they'll come to us with an algorithm or sort of rudimentary implementation of some research, and we will help productize that. And we've had a bit of success. I think Alex Dickinson is around. We've helped with Radii Devices, which was a spin out that he was involved with, and TopMD, which is a project that came out of medicine where we produced a minimum viable product for them, and they were successful in getting investment. So if you have an idea for a project, or you find yourself lacking software development skills for a bid, give me a knock and we can certainly have a chat with you. That's it from me.
Excellent. Thank you so much, John. The next speaker is going to be Neil White, who's going to just take us through some of the, he's lived this adventure from the health side. And so he's going to take us through some of the smaller steps that you can do to start building up into a bigger project.
Thanks, Age. I'm Neil White. I'm also a co-director of the CHT and in ECS, and I've gone through. I've been involved in these meetings since we started them a few years ago, and quite clearly an important thing is, so what do we do next? How do we actually make progress? Because even if you've been talking about some absolutely wonderful, innovative research ideas, the chances are that you probably won't be at the point where you can sit around a table and put a proposal together just yet. And there's a need to actually start some work on things like feasibility studies. So one of the things that Age mentioned earlier on was this concept of a GDP, which stands for Group Design Project, which we run in engineering, across the whole of engineering, in fact, that gives us the opportunity to get together a team of really bright students, usually a team of 5 or 6 students, to tackle a problem, which in this case could be the clinical problem. And so these run typically from the beginning of October until term ends in December. So they're quite short in length, relatively short in length. But the students do tend to make some really considerable progress. So in terms of mapping out some of the technical challenges and looking at the feasibility of some ideas, this is really good. There are also a number of other opportunities that might be of interest to try out ideas. And again, in engineering, we have individual projects that students do, which tend to run over a longer time scale, typically from October till about May time. And that's just one student. So, you know, trying out something very specific over a longer period is an option. We also have MSc students that pretty much work on their projects full time, and these tend to run from June until about September, so over the summer period. So again, it's quite an intensive, or certainly concerted effort from the students' point of view. They tend to be working on that project on a full-time basis. So all of these mechanisms, I've certainly been involved with them over the years. They've all got their pros and cons. I think that it's probably fair to say that the GDP is a really positive way forward. These have been really, really successful. So I'd certainly encourage all clinical colleagues here to potentially mention that to some of the engineers as a possible way forward. And then finally, obviously, we've got potential PhD students, which are obviously a longer term initiative, but there are cross-faculty schemes available for 3.5 year PhD programs. And having said at the beginning, it's unlikely that you'll sit round a table immediately afterwards. Actually, there are a few examples of where we've done that in the past. And we have actually drafted out some proposals and they have been successful. So yeah, there's lots of potential ways forward that can follow on from this particular meeting. Thank you.
Excellent. And then the last piece we wanted to put forward is we all know about all the standard funding options, but we wanted to make everybody, oops, wrong things shared. We wanted to make everybody aware of other opportunities that exist right here in Southampton, particularly with the TAS hub that is funded and running for the next 4 years. So Southampton was successful in getting a UKRI trustworthy autonomous systems hub, where the goal is very much about making things trustworthy by design, having assurance certification, and particularly understanding how it's going to be used and perceived by the end users and the public. And clinicians, it turns out that you are the end users that a lot of the folks in TAS are looking for. And the public is obviously the patients and the carers that you serve. There's a large structure, but they're interested in very particular concepts: trust, resilience, functionality, verification, security, and governance and regulations. Southampton itself is part of the hub. Those are all nodes. And as such, it has funding that is available over the next 4 years. There's a lot of, didn't realize they were built on this slide, I'm so sorry. It has many industrial partners, and it actually has an active healthcare theme. So they are particularly looking for healthcare examples to apply for funding, especially if it has the theme of autonomous systems. So a translation of that would be clinical decision-making system, right, or clinical care decision system, support system, and the trustworthiness around it. Right now, in many ways, they are very much focused on driverless cars and drones, but the healthcare sector is one of their major sectors. They have a lot of partners involved who are also putting in matched funding to various projects and programs. Skip ahead now until we get to the key, which is kind of the funding scheme within this. So one of the biggest pieces that they are doing right now is they're doing a set of nested funding calls. So Agile is a very small set and is looking purely at only the hub universities. You are part of a hub university and their partners. And the key here is to try to jumpstart research around trustworthy healthcare systems. The integrator role is looking at the hub, which you are a part of, as well as the nodes, and trying to create links around trustworthiness or resiliency or governance. There's calls for pump priming. So this is the classic sandboxing. Can we create an interdisciplinary project that is around creating the initial research in a certain area? And then moving on to the grand challenges across the world. These calls are coming out with fairly short turnaround times, but they, because you are here at Southampton as part of the hub, it's very easy. So they expect you to do things like use some of the research fellows that are attached to the hub. It's very easy to make contact with them. So I would encourage you as part of this, looking forward, to not just be thinking about these grand proposals, but to also be looking at some of these smaller funding opportunities, the pump priming, the Agile, that give you just enough resources to do an initial investigation. The key here is it has to be interdisciplinary. So they're actually very specifically asking for clinicians to meet engineers. And that's it for me. Thank you so much.
Well, that was just on time, Age. Well done. So I think we are nearly at the end now, and I hope really that everybody enjoyed their time. A couple of hours have flown by. Before we all go, Lindsay, do you mind putting your camera on, please? I know she's very shy. And if everybody unmute themselves and give her a clap, because Lindsay has. Lindsay has really been the key orchestrator of the organization here. Thank you so much. But of course, we also have our moderator associates, and thank you also very much for helping us take notes and get the meeting going. Thank you so much. Neil, do you have any other comments you would like to make?
So I think I would just like to say that if at any point, oh, I heard this thing about a GDP and I can't remember it, I don't know who to contact, please do reach out to Neil, myself, Ying, and we will point you to the right place. If you couldn't remember somebody's name, we could probably dredge it up and make the connections. Okay?
Now the point, if the slide can be shared, Age, if the slides can be shared on the channel or somewhere.
We will try to get a deck set up and send it, put it on the team site. How's that?
Yeah,
great.
And
That's great. Yeah.
And in the meantime, if anybody does not like their presentation or email or whatever to be shared, please let us know. Otherwise, because this is an internal meeting, we will be able to put it in Teams or something, and you can access it. Okay, well, without further delay, we will sign off. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.